All right, guys, welcome to another podcast. Today, you have a special podcast conversation, I guess you could say, between myself and two experts in the world of clandestine operations. We have CIA operatives, we have CIA contractors, more in my world of expertise, if you like, and where I have a little bit of experience in parallel in that here in Israel. And so if you're looking around here, there's the new studio. We set it up here, got it all squared away just in time for this conversation, which is pretty awesome because it's a little difficult to get these podcasts going while also actively fighting in an active war. And so time schedules for all of us and myself, it gets a little challenging, but I am so grateful and so thankful that today we have Sarah Adams back into the podcast. And we have also Mr. Boon. He's the one of the former contractors that was on the ground during the Benghazi attack of 9/11 in 2012. And so we just had Mr. Chris Tonto, who came onto the podcast, gave pretty much a good full overview of what happened on that day. But what we're going to do on this day today for 9/11 is we're going to dive into lessons learned from then, and have we learned any lessons, and what can we do to move forward as terrorist threats are continuous. They're never ending. They're always coming from all kinds of different angles that you don't really anticipate. And so I think we have some good people here who have some real world experience to be able to dive into that. Guys, we were talking here earlier about what kind of issues to discuss. And I know that one of the things that is very common is to talk about your typical jihadist, towel head, screams Allahu Akbar, that kind of stuff. I mean, total radical, classic movie style, whatever. But I think there are other terrorists out there and other terrorist threats that are still threatening the West, but from a completely different area that is kind of rarely talked about. It's kind of like that area that nobody really wants to talk about too, because usually it connects to countries like Russia, China, etc., Iran. What are you guys seeing today currently that is one of those serious threats that we're seeing for the West?
Well, obviously, we really focus on Islamic terrorism, but any threat is on our peripheral. So there's all kinds of different groups, who disagree with this or disagree with that and have angst for this party or for that party. But what's really concerning is how people can be inspired to commit acts of crime and hate and or murder because of their political belief or their moral belief. And we're seeing more and more just regular citizens who are obviously mentally ill, but they're taking upon themselves to act out, whatever injustice they feel has been done to them or their cause or their party and commit murder because of it.
Yeah, I mean, when we say the word radicalization, for many years it went with Islamist terrorism, right? But anyone can be radicalized. We've seen it, of course, in the pro-trans movement, very aggressively that they have moved to violence. We saw in Antifa, they went to violence. We saw it in Black Lives Matter, they went to violence. And then we've seen it even in these Hamas protesters and some of these Palestinian protesters on campus, they moved into violence, right? I mean, that is radicalization. You don't have to have your standard Bin Laden follower teaching it. A lot of other people can inspire you and persuade you, and that's a very scary thing. And persuasion's so easy now because of social media and the ways you can control narratives, right? But like TikTok's a really good example. You can really convince a lot of people that something's fact when it's not.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's, I think, one of the biggest threats that I'm seeing is actually social media and how it's causing huge divisions within our culture. Families that used to be able to sit down and have a political discussion, if you like, about the current president or policies overseas, whatever. can't have that conversation anymore. It seems like, at least that's what I'm hearing. And I know, also working with Scott Mann, he's addressed that in his book, and talking about the churn is how he kind of describes that. Um, that's pretty terrifying, I think, to see those signs that essentially an outside influence has caused division within either your own family or within your own country, or what have you, right?
Yeah, and it comes to like this feverish level where you won't listen to another side, you won't have a healthy debate, which unfortunately we just saw someone who was involved in healthy debates all over college campuses, assassinated yesterday, Charlie Kirk, right? That's the point of college campuses. You're supposed to be able to bring different ideas there, debate them, learn from each other, grow from each other, and those days are gone. And this is very concerning that we don't actually have that for the younger generation. Because what are they going to grow up to be?
It's also
Hmm.
very terrifying where it's just one single issue, which can, separate families and friends, where the majority of your beliefs are the same. But let's say you disagree on abortion, but you disagree so much that you alienate your family, or you're willing to commit violence on another person just because they disagree with you. And that's a problem.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I'm seeing. That is of huge concern to me. Like you just said, these are small issues. When you break them down, if you have the dialogue, they are small issues, literally small issues. Yet people are so divisive. Why is that? Like, what has brought us to this place right now? Like, what? Why are we not able to have normal conversation and questioning and asking and answering, and each one, explaining their side or their worldview? What on earth?
I think a lot of it has been this political divide in the United States. The two-party system is really destroying the country, right? I worked in Congress, and a lot of these Congress members, they'll say one thing to the public, and then they're having dinner together, right? On both sides of the aisle. They make
Hmm.
deals behind the scenes, but they make the public think they're divided, and then the public's like dying on a hill for these people who really don't care about them. They're very corrupt. So it is this kind of like false reality people have fallen into, and they don't realize they're almost being like played by the system. As we all know from kind of our backwards, this is covert influence, but it's hard to let people realize and know they fell for something like that. Nobody wants to admit, oh, I got played, right? And that
Hmm.
is what is happening a lot. Even our media is very controlled. There's reasons some of these broadcasters make $20 million. It's not
Hmm.
because they're mediocre bachelor's degree in communications did anything. It's because they have a voice that can influence people. So that's a very important thing people need to pay attention to when they're listening to people. A lot of these people are paid to tell you something to influence you.
Hmm. And just for the record, are you being paid by anyone to say what you say?
No, they couldn't afford me even if I wanted to.
And I think that's the beauty of what we've been doing. I mean, I say we because people like us, Boone, you live in the shadows. You don't have a public profile. You don't post pictures of cool missions you've done or talk about them. And I found myself in defense of like our world, kind of, if I didn't do that, then people can't see that, hey, you know what? The IDF is just like you. What we're doing is just like what America did when they went to fight against the terrorists that knocked into the Twin Towers on 9/11. That's what we're doing post October 7th. But it's like, if I don't do that, and there's so many people that said, man, I'm so grateful that someone from our community is speaking out and being vocal. But it to me, that's just terrible that we even have to do that, because it's like I had to recognize that I can get our voice out there, but otherwise nobody would know, nobody would care, and more hate on the people that are doing that dirty job of fighting wars for our safety and security.
Well, I think there's a balance, and I don't know if a lot of guys really understand how to do it. So,
Yeah.
if you say anything, say nothing. Um, it's not, the quiet professional. It's taken out of context. So we should be quiet professionals. We shouldn't be silent professionals. Some
Yeah.
things do need to be said. Some things do need to be made public. Now, when you talk about certain operational details, TTP, stuff like that, the public doesn't need to know that. But some things do need to be public. And it's good, people like you are actually putting things like that out. So we are educated about it. Some things should be transparent.
Yeah. But it is very uncomfortable, right? I mean, it's like even now, still ongoing for me at least. I never like getting in front of the camera. I never like talking about missions because I'm constantly concerned that I might slip or say something that would affect, like you just said, the security. What do you guys call it? OPSEC or what? I forget the different acronyms and names you guys call it.
Yeah, we,
Um,
we use OPSEC for the most part.
yeah. So, which basically, to break it down, it's giving away secrets of the craft or secrets of how we operate. So, for example, my team in the past few months, we, through our clandestine missions, if you like, were successful in retrieving 7 hostages that came back to Israel. Right.
Awesome.
And that's a huge win. That's amazing. And that's all I can say. That's it. I can't explain how we did it. What were the cool, smart people, not me, but the ones who did that thought, how can we do this? And to just be involved with that is so amazing. You want to tell everybody, of course, because all people think is that all we're doing is we're killing innocent people all day long or whatever. And it's not just me that gets that. The American operators get that all the time as well, or Marines or whoever that's out there fighting our wars for us. And it's terrible that we come to the place where you have to speak out and not be the quiet professionals, right? But I like the way you put that so perfectly.
Yeah, we got a lot of hate after Benghazi, right? Our job in Benghazi was to collect intelligence. But then all these conspiracy theorists put out this stuff like we were moving weapons to Syria, even though it was the Qatari government. They don't know the difference apparently. And so then people started blaming us and saying, "Oh yeah, you deserve to be attacked by terrorists." It's like, what are you talking about? We collect info and read reports.
Hmm.
We're not gun runners, but just these conspiracies really go haywire, and then these people get so wrapped up in what they believe they actually do become dangerous. You get threats, like we get threats when we just say what really happened when we were there. I know obviously, you and your forces get crazy threats, and it's some of
Yeah.
the strangest things I've ever seen. It's like, if you don't have anything useful to add to the conversation, like shut your mouth because you don't know what's going on.
So, just to give people a little bit of a context here, and I'm learning this with time. Sarah, you were on the ground in Benghazi, part of the intelligence side, helping gather intelligence for the operators and to help them better their jobs. And according to my conversation with some of the people that were there, um, basically, I would put it like this: you were like the bulldog of the CIA team, so to speak, that was willing to do whatever it takes to get that intelligence, and it even got you in trouble. Is that a good assessment? Do you
That's
like the
pretty
way I
much
pointed that out?
It still gets me in trouble. I have FBI trying to like shake us down for where we get info because they don't have access. It's like, sorry that you're failing at your job. But yeah,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you want to do the best job you can do. And as you know, you sometimes have to be very, very creative, get the information you need to get. And it's not that hard to do if you really care about making relationships and doing things the right way. Even when we went to start our investigation into Benghazi, we obviously had to reach out to people, in Libya. And really, we were honest, straightforward, right? We're a form of CIA. That's a pretty bad sign. Um, and then we lost our brothers, you lost your sons and fathers and brothers to these terrorists too. And that really does go a long way. Very large populations of this world are, anti-terrorist. It's sad we're watching more and more become pro towards these groups, but at the end of the day, the majority of us who have seen how they operate don't want to live under them and don't want anyone else to have to live under them.
Hmm. Yeah, and unfortunately, I have to use movie scenes for people because they haven't seen what we've seen. They haven't seen the brutality. They haven't seen the evil that we're up against. I mean, I'll just give one example. One of the men that was held that we had been in charge of transporting to get them to questioning, basically one of the terrorists, because we had hundreds of terrorists in the beginning of the war that we were just basically trucking them out of Gaza. And so at one point, we're face to face with a guy that we found out later that had a lock of hair in his pocket. And the reason why was because he kept as a memento from the young Israeli girl that he had raped. And yeah, and it's like you're looking at this guy, right? And you're looking at just pure evil. How do you explain that to somebody? And that's like just the tip of the iceberg. That's the nice guy in the batch, right? The ones that torture and do horrible things to the Gazans, let alone Israel. And to try to explain to them that's why we hit and targeted this person is because they are the worst part of evil on this earth. And to have to give a quote like, well, have you ever seen American Sniper? Well, you know the scene where the dude runs around with a drill? The, does that paint evil for you? That's what we're up against. And that's just, again, a tip. Like, there's so many. I mean, you guys have way more, probably seen way more horrible stuff than that. And how do you explain that to people? How do you contextualize that that's what we're up against?
Yeah, it's super complicated. I had a situation like this. So I caught the number two of the Taliban, and then he went on to be a key negotiator of this Doha deal. And our government, especially our politicians and our State Department, viewed him as a moderate, right? And I'm like, this man in the 90s went with two other commanders into a village and killed every man and every son in the village, right? So don't tell me someone who will walk in and kill all these innocents, none of these people were fighters, is a moderate. And it's very, very frustrating that our government almost puts these buckets of like good terrorists and bad terrorists. And it's so they can play one of the sides, right? Or so they don't
Mhm.
feel as bad when they're really supporting terrorism. And it's an uphill battle. There are so many people who really believe you can reform these terrorists, you can use them at your whim. You can take advantage of them. They're not educated. And I really think we're actually getting worse at understanding the enemy instead of better.
Yeah,
Mm.
I don't think that you can really force someone to understand something. Like you can give them the information. It's up to them to accept it or not. Some people get it. You tell them and they're like, yeah, I get it. Okay. Others, you have to show them and they're like, all right, I see what you're talking about. Then there's others, you can tell them, you can show them. They'll still refuse. They won't believe it. Not because they don't think it's true. It's because it scares them. They're fearful and they just don't want to believe it.
Mm. Well, Sarah, last time that we had a conversation, I tried to bring up the issue of Julani in Syria. And why is it that the US government is, well, not just the US, I mean, he went to France, he went to all these countries in Europe, and gets the basically full backing from the European countries, from the United States, Canada. Um, and then he goes back home with all of that money that he just got from his, tour, if you like, and almost immediately went to butchering and murdering the Druze community and the Christian community and the other Muslim minority communities, and and it was worse than October 7th. And how come is it that these people can get away with that, but when I go and fight actual evil, I'm the genocidal creep, and this guy gets no coverage?
Yeah, I mean, the sad part is people sometimes want to use Syria, but they don't care about Syria, right? There was a civil war going on for over a decade. Over 500,000 people died, and nobody cared. Most of the videos we see out of Gaza are actually videos from Syria, right? And the other
Correct.
part is the U.S. government hasn't really cared about Syria. And now there's Al Qaeda terrorist takes over, and they're like, oh, we're going to be buddies with him. And just this week they issued a visa to him. So he's coming to the United States from September 21st to September 25th of this month. It's very, very frustrating. He rejoined Al Qaeda at the end of 2021, as most people, got really excited about the Taliban taking Afghanistan back, and a
Mhm.
lot of groups came together. That's then when they started planning the Syrian blitzkrieg.
Yeah.
Obviously, he took the country, self-proclaimed president. This was all backed by terrorists. Everybody who fought then were terrorists. And our government wants to like lie about that and say, oh no, these guys just need to be integrated into the military. It'll be fine. And like you said, we took sanctions off. Well, after we took sanctions off, Giuliani offered the head of Al Qaeda a percentage of the oil revenue. So the Al Qaeda now is going to get a monthly percentage of oil revenues to fund their operations in Afghanistan. So there's so many things going on. Our government's completely ignoring it. And when people tell them what's happening, it's like they're covering up or they're blowing you off or they're saying, no, 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 that's not happening because they want to push this narrative that no, there's a democracy in Syria now and we're backing in and we're going to give these people a chance.
Hmm. Insane.
Mhm.
It just blows my mind. Israel's been the only country in the region / in the world that's assisted the Syrian people. They were being genocided,
Mhm.
and nobody talks about it. Nobody talks except for what's that name? The guy Ballard. Um, I forget his first name, but in any case, he came here on a mission. He's the guy who's been helping rescue at-risk, mostly children that have been used as
Children,
sex
yeah.
slaves and all that. And so he used his nonprofit to go over there, and the things that he's saying. Okay, I mean, he owes Israel nothing. Again, these are people that are neutral, and he's saying Israel's the one that's helping, no one else. You know what I'm saying? So again, it's not to take my Doron's word for it because he's a soldier in the IDF and he's a crazy Zionist, um, but to me, we've gotten to an all-time low. Your government supports terrorism, but individual people take it on themselves at best to help. And you also have the Free Burma Rangers as well. I know is one organization. There's a few good organizations, but they're like a drop in the bucket of those that are helping against this wave of evil. Again, why? Why is that?
Well, there's a social media influence as well. And like you said, Giuliani was committing massacres against Christians and other groups in Syria. But when you look online, that's not how it reads. It reads that anti-Syrian government extremists clashed with Syrian government forces. That's not what happened. You know, Innocents were massacred is what really happened. But that's not what the people are seeing. And unfortunately, a lot of people aren't well versed in geopolitics. A lot of people don't even know where Syria is. They don't
Right.
understand the history, so what they
Yeah.
see online, they believe.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
other thing that was happening, especially still on Twitter, is they're almost this term is shadow banning. I know that's not exactly what's happening, but some of these people speaking out in the other way, they are muting, what they're saying. We know a fighter who fought against ISIS in Syria for many years, and all of his reach has gone down because he's been telling the truth.
Wow. And I've experienced that as well. At the beginning of the October 7th war, when I started to go to use social media to get the word out because I saw how there were so many lies coming out from mainstream media, I got shadow banned. I got shut down. I had to like basically beg the social media gods to remove the ban from my I forget what they called it, whatever it was I was showing. I didn't show any of the horrors of what we saw. All I did was literally stand there in uniform and just explain what's happening and what's going on. And that's what I got shut down for.
Oh, remember, it's an old warfare tactic. Back in the old days, we used leaflets or flyers.
Mhm.
Now, modern technology, we have the internet. Information transfers so fast all around the country. Use social media. So if you control the narrative, you can control how people act, how they react. You can influence them.
Mhm. And so, and again, that's to go into because we're talking about some of the terrorists and all that, right? Um, but in my opinion, what is actually fueling, like you said, the way people are reacting and what they're being exposed to, it's those are in control of a lot of these apps, right? Or social apps. So TikTok being one of
Mhm.
the top most common ones in the Arab world, for example, that I know for sure, where they glean all their information about the world if you like, outside of their own culture and whatnot. Um, who controls that? Who's controlling that information?
Yeah, and who's actually vetting it, etc. The frustrating part is even when you do get these fact checkers, remember, Facebook was doing it, but then that was politically motivated. It leans certain ways, so even that is difficult to say this information is correct and this information's not. Right? You have to
Mhm.
really have the knowledge yourself to kind of weigh through these things. It's very, very frustrating. As you know, we work on Al Qaeda in Afghanistan. Well, even the think tanks in DC are putting out incorrect information. Our own government's putting out incorrect information, right? And they're telling you that's fact. So just think of at lower levels all this type of information. So it's very, very frustrating when people aren't like using integrity and making sure the information is correct. You've seen a lot of politicians in the United States even lying about Israel, saying they're involved in all this crazy stuff that they have no involvement in, right? So it's very
Mhm.
dangerous, but remember, stuff like that gets clicks, it gets followers, it gets attention, and that's really where it becomes dangerous. The people don't actually care that they're putting out misinformation. They just want to rile you up.
It's like you
Mhm.
asked the question, who controls that? I think
Mhm.
the answer is yes. Everyone's controlling it. It's like nuclear weapons proliferation. It's a new weapon. So like TikTok kind of owns that. I think everyone's trying to get a hand in it so they can influence whatever's important to them. The US government, yes, we're part of that influence. Any government with any type of reach or power is attempting to influence for, to pursue their goals.
And therefore people need to be very, very careful about what they consume, right? And the information that reaches them, right? They need to question everything.
Yes.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I've brought this up numerous times. Obviously, there's Wikipedia, which a
God.
lot of stuff on it is not correct. But when we actually try to update and correct the Benghazi portion of Wikipedia, which is horrendous, our IP got blocked for an entire year. So even
Wow.
if you want to be proactive and put out the correct information, it's like there's forces that want to keep the misinformation out there, so it's a very frustrating thing, and the public doesn't see this, right? They think, "Oh, I'm going
Mhm.
to this online dictionary and it has all the facts." And it's like, "No, the thing is full of lies." So it is just a frustrating thing, but as I always tell Boone, we can't spend all day though either telling people like the right thing or explaining things to people. We get like hundreds of messages a day. Is this right? Is this true? I've
Mhm.
heard this. And it's like you have to take it upon yourself to really do better critical thinking and pay attention to the sources things are coming from and those type of things. Because, at the end of the day, it's up to you to really have a real baseline of what's happening because you don't get to make excuses when things go down. You're like, oh, I didn't know that was happening. Like a lot of people have their heads buried in the sand.
Mhm.
Anytime you see a podcast, a commercial, a piece of news, whatever it is, you need to ask yourself, especially if it has music playing, um, what is the author or the publisher? What are they trying to show me? What do they want me to see? What do they want me to hear? And then why? Why do they want me to hear this or see this? What's their message and why?
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
evaluate it from there. And then there, and even us on this podcast, like we have an agenda. We're trying to put out information, although it's for the right reason and right information from our perspective. But everybody does that, so people really need to evaluate what they're seeing and why they're being shown that.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Um, you know, it's just so mind blowing. I mean, there's so many things that I just keep seeing and it just blows my mind. So why is it that someone like Tucker Carlson, I'm going to call him out, or Candace Owens, call them out? They're in the non-mainstream media, so-called, right? Independent, and should be the voice of reason, so to speak, to because we're not controlled. Yet, a young girl from Ukraine. I mean, to bring things into context a little bit, so people understand how bad it's gotten. A young girl from Ukraine came to the United States to look for a new future, hope, gets on a tram, and gets brutally, mercilessly murdered in front of a bunch of people. Nobody stood up. More than that, what I saw from the footage, people were actually looting her items as she's bleeding to death. And I'm like, so none of those so-called smart people, non-mainstream media, are reporting about it. The mainstream media is not reporting about it. And the person who did talk about it, Charlie Kirk, he ended up also becoming a victim of this very skewed worldview that if it's a white person, right, then they're all fair game. If it's a guy who's a Trump guy, he's fair game. And the ugly stuff that you see online that people are saying. So I'm saying, in actuality, you were there witnessing a crime, you did nothing, and then at home, sitting there on your social media, the things that people are saying about Charlie Kirk's assassination. What have we come to? Are people not realizing that the social media and the powers that be have crossed a line?
Yeah, I think we're in uncharted territory right now as far as America goes, and in what we were, what we are, and what we're going to become. Um, Unfortunately, I watched that video and I've seen a lot of dark things. That video broke my heart. It
Yeah.
really made me sad to be an American, just seeing the poor girl, and then to watch other Americans ignore it. Yeah, it was crushing, but it doesn't fit the mainstream media, especially when it comes to race or reverse racism. It's okay to be Black Lives Matter, but white lives don't matter. No, all lives matter. So it doesn't fit the popular narrative right now. So you're not going to get a lot of reporting on it, unfortunately, which is sad.
And the
Mhm.
other thing we've been really talking as we've been going around discussing Al Qaeda's future homeland plotting to these communities is you don't have the community you had in 2001. There is a lot of division. A lot of people were brought here that hate us. There is people who won't go and aid someone, right? There are people who won't go aid white people, just like we saw in this horrible earthquake in Afghanistan. The men wouldn't touch the women and save them and let them just lay there and die, right? These
Mm.
things are real and they're happening. Now, those people are in our country. So we also have to really like look around and be like, look what we have enabled, look what it's become. It's a very scary thing. And unless people see this problem and proactively work together, especially as a community, to fix these problems, I don't see it getting better. And remember, a lot of people get benefits from keeping us divided, right? It keeps this two-party system intact, which is a disaster. It keeps a lot of money going into politicians' hands. It's a very dangerous thing. It keeps terrorism fueled, right? I mean, Muslim Brotherhood is probably one of the biggest influences in this
Mhm.
country, and they're like afraid to designate them as a terrorist group, right? So all of these things really do come together, and they cause damage to our country, and nobody's really being honest about what then is going to happen. We saw this poor, Urena on the bus and then, Charlie, but as you've seen, that is also going to radicalize people. It is. I mean, you can't say it's not. Um, so what is going to become of that as well? And also, the Charlie Kirk thing, so many people have praised it that that's gonna radicalize them as well, and they'll do more of those. Because look at the attention those people are getting. Look what they got, and they'll keep doing it, and that's a scary thing. That's why they say, after an attack, like a terrorist attack, don't name the attacker, don't give them the praise that they
Mhm.
want, right?
Yeah.
But we don't have news cycles like that. These people know they'll be famous from this.
I think
Hmm.
right now, currently, America has an identity problem. We forgot who we were, and a
Hmm.
lot of people don't want to be that anymore.
And it's not they taught you it's not good. The flag is oppressive. It's not good to be American. Our government's horrible, and that's what they've been teaching everybody. And there's people who really believe that. So we have a country of people who really don't stand for what this country is, and our ideals are kind of falling apart right in front of us.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's also why I'm bringing this up, because I think, again, that's what I'm saying is this is what I think a lot of people are not really noticing. It's everybody's noticing the obvious and talking about it, and that's great, but you have to pay attention to the fact that you're losing your values. Boone, you nailed it on the head. To me, that's exactly what it's all about. How many people have have read the Constitution, right, of America? How many have read it? I have it. I have a pamphlet here, or like a little, um, of the Constitution for myself. I've read it. But again, how many Americans have read the Constitution? Do you understand what the founding fathers foresaw for America? Because some people are asking, well, why support Israel? Why stand with Israel? I'm like, well, I don't know. Maybe because it's the founding fathers' vision that they saw themselves in alignment with the children of Israel, new land, starting afresh. God's going to be with us, just like God was with the children of Israel that were running away from the oppression. How many people know that Hebrew was the third, one of three languages for the new country of America? Right? It was German, English, Hebrew. They don't teach this in America. That's history, right? So you're being robbed of your history. You're being robbed of your identity. I didn't know this until I homeschool my kids. And you know and there's so many things, what's his name, Chaim Salomon. Okay, Chaim Salomon was the guy that funded the Revolutionary War for America. He gave all of his money and he died a poor man. He was a super wealthy Jew, but he died literally a poor man because America didn't even pay him back a cent, right? For his contribution. So all I'm saying is like people have lost the why and what is America all about? And to me, that's just heartbreaking. Being the son of a U.S. American vet that went and fought in World War II for those very values.
Right.
Yeah, and we our whole generation fought a war, right? And the
Yeah,
one thing that really upset us is another generation gonna fight a war, but what have they been taught? How do they feel? We have activists all over our military. I mean, we had people in our military in the last day writing stuff that they're happy. Charlie Kirk, a 31-year-old public speaker, was killed. It's like he's not in a role that affects or influences you. But you're still confident just going out and saying something like that, and you wear a uniform for this country. So it's just this is a very crazy thing, um, what we're allowing, how we don't vet even our own people, how we let them talk like this and do this. I was in the DoD when we had that whole extremism stand down day. And so what happened is that it was a whole day you didn't work, and then they did these presentations where they briefed you on extremism. And of course, they hardly covered Islamic extremism, and the whole section was right wing extremism. They didn't even cover left wing extremism. And I went to my boss after and I said, this might have been the worst presentation I've ever seen because it wasn't balanced, right?
right.
But that is completely okay. It's a completely normal thing. That's not just in our military, it's in our schools, it's in our universities. And until we get people to push back and say, stop, educating people wrong,
Yeah.
this does kind of light a fire under them too, which is scary.
Hmm. So just like you've been fighting terrorists um, globally, right? Um, I think we need to wake up and see that we are being terrorized by these demonic ideologies that are plaguing our societies, and we need to take our country back, basically, right? And what does that mean? How do you take your country back? It means educating yourself, uh, reading books, not Wikipedia. Like you just gave a perfect example. You were there, and you're the one trying to fill in the data from being an eyewitness, and you're being barred from doing that. How many more Wikipedia pages are there on topics that when you or I, who want to educate ourselves, go and search, are being misinformed?
Yeah. I
So
mean,
how
I'd
do we
say at
how
this
do we do
point,
that?
most of it. Yeah.
I think a lot of it comes back down to the family unit. There's a
Mhm.
lot of families who um, aren't being brought up in some type of faith, and I don't care what your faith is, but like some type of faith, some type of moral compass, left and right, believing in some type of values, spreading those values, living those values. We just don't see that anymore. Now it's like, well, anything's possible.
Mhm.
You want to identify as a unicorn, you can identify as a unicorn. No, you can't. It's not healthy. It's not right. We need to get back to that. I
Yeah.
think that's a start to getting back to unifying the country, understanding that we're actually more alike than we are different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, one thing I can tell you, and this is again based on my biased research of history, Europe was founded on Judeo-Christian values. United States was founded on Judeo-Christian values. And the minute both Europe and America turned their backs on God, that's when I see where the turn of society and the deterioration of society, in addition to 9/11 attacks, and it's just been a downfall ever since. And so my message in simplified version is make God great again, not America, because it's not Americans that make America great. It's the God that you trust in and said you trusted in and that led you to this place that made everything great because you founded your foundations on good foundations. But when you turn on it, it's going to turn on you.
Right. It's a good point.
Yeah. Um, what kind of are you guys seeing any kind of influence from the KGB or China or these outside influences other than hardcore hardline terrorists that are actually using psyops, I guess you call it, right, to get Americans to turn on each other, to turn on their foundations, basically to become demoralized. Like, are you seeing that coming from those outside influences?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a lot of things that Russia and China will take, and they'll magnify it. So in America, you think, oh, a lot of people feel this way. A lot of people are backing it, but it's bots. I mean, also there's these Indian bot farms, there's Pakistani bot farms, etc. And so it's interesting. They say like, even on Twitter, like only 20% of the people on it are even real or something like that, right? So all day you're arguing with people who aren't even real. I argue all day with people who they'll have like mega or something, and they live in Karachi, right? Like they're in Pakistan. Americans don't realize this. They take
Yeah.
everybody at face value. Oh, in his profile, he says he's a Marine. He'll say that once in a while. I'll be like, this guy's not a Marine. He doesn't even live in America. But it's like
Yeah.
people have their head in the clouds on these things. And so yes, our enemies, of course, are doing that. It's not just the enemies at the nation state level, even like Al Qaeda and ISIS do this as well. The Taliban have a digital talent. They have a whole unit to do online monitoring, to put up misinformation, to kind of discredit people who are telling the truth about them. And that's like a terrorist group that, I put them on like the C team, right? So you have to realize everybody's doing this in some way. So when you're consuming this information, you're seeing info from Russia, you're seeing info from China, you're seeing info from terrorists, you're seeing it from the US government, right? And it's like,
Mhm.
how do you decide, what's real and what's not? I mean, our own government puts up propaganda. They just months ago told the American public they picked up the mastermind for the Abbey Gate attack, and it wasn't true at all.
Mhm.
And Americans consume it, and then after the fact, no one went back and said, "Why were you dishonest about this? Why did you lie to us about this?" Right? So it's there is no accountability too, and that's why people do it because they're never going to get called on it, and they're always going to get away with it.
It's just like
Mhm.
we see more use of drones in warfare. It's a new tool. Social media is no different. It's a new weapon in warfare, and it's being used by everybody.
Mhm. Yeah.
Not only threats, but also just criminals. A lot of people just taking advantage of you online as well.
Right. Exactly. I mean, billions of dollars a year stolen from people and whatnot because of yeah, yeah. And
Yes, and
so
poor Graham, I think she's flying a Marine back home. Ugh.
I know, right? Exactly. Exactly, right? Have we seen um that terror groups are also monetizing that to help fund their operations? Like that's another
Yes.
means of making money for their terror uh, for their terrorizing, right? Or yeah.
Well, it's really interesting. You know how in Ukraine, there's all those social media campaigns like "fund a missile" or "put your name on it." Well, ISIS was doing that in Syria. It was like buy a soldier boots, but buy him a weapon, and you could actually then send the money via crypto. That's at the lowest level, of course. And then, of course, they use a lot of different ways to bring in money. I mean, Al Qaeda is a billion-dollar organization. You know, and we say organization because they're real business, right? So,
Hmm.
they will find ways to take advantage of this and to bring money in any way they can. One thing that they do a lot of and they get a huge chunk from is they own a very large percentage of the Hajj travel. So these are actually legitimate travel agencies owned by Al Qaeda that give visas and do travel. And think about then what else they can use those legitimate organizations for that they've built and they fund over the years. They can get people to travel anywhere around the world. They can get terrorist visas to United States, right? Because they have this history of doing travel. So there's just a lot of stuff like that that's still influence if you think about it, because now they have access to the consular sections at embassy, they have access to the airlines, and we forget the way
Hmm.
in which the enemies take advantage of this. You know, even in the United States, there's a lot of chatter about China owning farmland, but there's no chatter that China owns a large percentage of our ports. They own electric companies, right? Um, th- th- it's so much more than farmland. They can shut down our country if we go to war, and our troops won't be able to even get out the port. So it's like we really aren't seeing the level at which this is being done to us.
Hmm. Yeah. And I mean, I know also there's like highways that are being built in Dallas, for example, by Chinese corporations. And I mean, who wants that? I mean, I'm just asking myself, right? And the same for Israel. I mean, we also have outside outsourcing, right, projects. But look what it led to on October 7th, because we gave all of these work permits for these Palestinians living in Gaza that came into Israel every day to do all the jobs we don't want to do. Well, then they know the infrastructure, they know the
Mhm,
electric grid because they laid it. They know all this stuff, and then they bring it back home. And then talking about making an industry out of terrorism, the same thing with Gaza. They are flooding the internet with, fund the poor Gazans that are
mhm,
starving and all this. I saw it in Norway when I visited there during the war. And I told the parliament members, I said, y'all, this is on three different ads on the train that I took from Oslo to my buddy. Three different ads. Let that sink in. Three separate
yes,
organizations paid for ads on the train to go with the news cycle, give money to Gaza. And I know exactly where it goes to. And then
mhm,
beyond that, all the humanitarian aid that comes in and the good heart of the world and Israel that floods Gaza with all the humanitarian aid, it gets hijacked by the terrorists, and then they're selling it on the black market, and that's how they fund terrorism.
mhm. Yeah, I was watching this video and it was someone bringing aid in. I don't remember who it was, maybe the Egyptians or somebody. And a woman walks up to get the aid and then she was like, "How much?" And they're like, "No, it's aid, it's free." And she's like, "No, we usually have to pay for aid." And it's like, I mean, because right, it was this
Yeah,
broken system.
yeah,
It's very, very sad.
yeah. But like we were saying, also the internet is shutting down the truth behind all of this dirty, evil operations that are happening. It's coming from again, China, Russia, Iran. These are, to me, the main players that I'm aware of. And and again, you need to ask why, right? So for Iran, they want the caliphate. They want the Islamic caliphate, and they want to be at the head of it. Well, who else wants to be ahead of that caliphate? Turkey, Erdogan, right? Nobody talks about him. And by the way, he's been very active in Syria, for those who are aware or not aware. And it's just amazing to me how mainstream media and governments, like you pointed out, completely silent. They are not informing the people. They're not warning the people. And in effect, you're self-inflicting yourself. And that's what I don't understand. How is it that you think that this is somehow going to benefit you in the West?
Yeah, I remember people have very short memories. Like there was a caliphate when my grandparents were young, right? And people act like the caliphate was thousands of years ago, and you bring it up and you're talking some crazy medieval thing, right? And like you said, there's major backers behind the caliphate: Iran, Turkey, Qatar. There's huge Saudi donors to it, etc. Besides now these terrorist nations being Syria, Afghanistan, probably soon to be as Somalia, right? And
Mhm.
everybody's just got their head in the sand, not watching all these elements come together. It's like they're coming together not only to have a caliphate, but then to be another opposing view to us, right? They're not putting it together to oppose China. They're putting it together to oppose us and then also Russia. And that's really just being completely ignored.
Mhm. Yeah. And yeah, and it really really concerns me that it just feels like the perfect storm for Red Dawn reality on U.S. soil, and that's very concerning to me.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about Al Qaeda's upcoming plot, which is going to be a very large plot. But someone I work on in Europe on the plot wrote to me yesterday. After when Charlie was shot, and she said Al Qaeda doesn't even have to attack America; it's just going to destroy itself by on their own, right? And this is a European saying it, and she's right. And it's really sad. We have a lot of bad stuff ahead of us, unfortunately, until we fix these divisions within ourselves and unite.
Hmm. And so, what are the things that we can do? I mean, we're talking about all the problems. I like to bring solutions. I don't like to just whine about how bad it is. I mean, soldiers are good at doing that, but I like to find solutions. What are some of the solutions that you guys have in your mind that you can think of?
I think looking, left and right, starting with your neighbors, your family, your neighbors, starting there on a community level and just pushing it up,
Hmm.
getting back to our roots.
Hmm.
Exactly, because at the end of the day, that's really what matters. I mean, a lot of people get lost in social media. None of those people are real, right? The person who's real lives right here outside the back of my house, or the people I talk to when I walk the dog in the neighborhood, the people I
Hmm.
see at work, the people, at our favorite restaurants. Like these are the people that you live with every day. They are your life, right? They know you the best. And we get so strung up and pulled into these universes we don't even belong in, and they don't even impact us. And kind of like Boo says, bring it back home. Focus on the home front. You can't help anyone, or you can't improve anything if you don't have your own house in order.
Hmm. And I can say from lessons learned for October 7th, that is being implemented for years, and that's exactly that. Um, just the other day, we had another horrible terrorist attack not far from my home. Actually, my wife's friend, when they went to go to an outing together with the kids, her friend just missed the attack by a few minutes because she was late. So there's something good, I guess, in being late, as much as that drives me nuts. But you know, the one who stopped it was a good Samaritan that happened to just get their weapons license, and they were the ones that went and engaged with the terrorists that were just shooting people mercilessly, right? I mean, indiscriminately. And then you see in one of the cam footages from the cars that were there, um, you see a taxi guy who pulled up right next to the bus. And instead of running for his life, because he knows exactly what's going on, and he's an older guy too. So he's like, what am I going to do? Right. He's not armed, nothing. No, the client in the back of his cab is an older lady, and he takes the time. Of course, he's looking to be safe and trying to find the right opportunity, but then he takes the time to come around, expose himself to the terrorists, and then walk the old lady away from the terrorists. Why?
Hmm.
Why? We just talked about, the problem, right, with this poor young girl from Ukraine and what happened to her, or Charlie Kirk, where this one moron in that whole crowd is cheering, the assassination of an innocent guy. I mean, I don't care how you want to slice or dice and try to demonize him. He was an innocent American that loved America, that is fighting for America, um, and to rejoice over that. So the contrast of those who are going to step up when it gets really ugly, and when the terrorists are going to unfold their mega plan, if you like we've been talking for months now, is the America's October 7th that's around the corner. It's the people that are going to step up are the ones who have built community and they love and respect their neighbor. 100% on that. And I'm just saying that's the difference why we react like that in Israel. Not because we're better, but we don't have any other choice. We're you know what I'm saying? Everybody hates us. If I'm not going to be for me, there's actually a saying in Israel: if nobody's going to be for me, then who will be for me, or however it's in English. Um, um, but that statement is basically saying the Jewish people have just gotten used to being community, and I think it's about time that Americans go back to that, because that was
Yeah,
the
and
roots.
Yeah, and what worries me is you almost have to wait for something bad to happen, and we're trying to, as you know, go community to community and say now is the time to plan. Even it's just simple things. Make sure your blood banks are full, your food banks are full. Have community stop the bleed courses, right? Very simple things that in any disaster will help. We have horrible disasters in the United States last year, like two pretty devastating hurricanes.
Mhm.
Obviously, you've seen these fires we've had, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
also the floods, the more resilient you get, the more you'll be able to help others, right? Because then you'll be fine in the crisis and can move on, and be a force multiplier for someone else. So yeah, we really focus on that resiliency piece and getting people to come together and like you said, working as a community. Because I can sit here and plan all I want. Well, that's useless. Now, if I'm in a community organization and 200 of us are planning and moving forward on an objective, boy, that makes a huge difference.
Something that's
Mhm.
seen too in a lot of crises is that some people normally just want to help, they just don't know what to do. So that
Mm.
one person who is capable and trained, he or she steps up, other people will follow, especially if you give them a little direction. So the more capable we can be and the more capable people we have, the better off collectively we will be. And then we'll be able to bring the weaker ones with us and bring them up to our level. But yeah, it's got to start on the community level.
Yeah,
Mhm.
there's a really kind of a heartwarming story about that. So, about a year and a half ago, a volunteer here in Tampa was going into like the Russian occupied side of Ukraine to save an American. So they get him and put him in the car, and then they start leaving the city. And people start lining up behind their car and evacuating, right? They're like, hey, someone's doing it. This is our shot. And by the time they got out of the city, there was like 40 cars and over 100 people in those cars, that people that safely evacuated just because they saw one car doing it. And you really can be an inspiration in that way and not even know it just by being the one to choose to go forward.
Mm. Yeah. And I think again to this is a very special day, um, commemorating the victims of the terrorist attack, the horrible terrorist attack on October 7th. Sorry, on 9/11, and then of course, Benghazi. Um, you were hit on that day for a very specific reason, and then of course that's in my memory as well. And for those of us who have fought against terrorism, um, but also we have Charlie Kirk that was murdered on the 10th, just the day before. And I don't think that was for any by mistake, so to speak, right? I have a feeling that that was very, very specifically planned. And we'll probably know more later, once we get some more information on the attackers. But to commemorate this day, I think the best thing is to amplify, like you just said. It's that one person that did the right thing, and it led to other people fighting that out. And what Charlie did is he fought for dialogue. He fought to have the conversation with those that were hating him, spitting on him, cursing him, and chose to continuously, on the daily, just be courteous and nice to people, and to just try to have a dialogue. And so I think if anything that we can learn from this conversation is, let's stop not having dialogue. Let's stop, going into our corner of the ring and be like, no, I'm going to tear them up. You know, we need to start having dialogue, and I think that's one of the best ways we can commemorate an amazing American that fought for America and American values. Um, and that's what I feel is the best way that we can kind of move forward in light of this horrible attack.
Yeah, we were up in Staten Island a couple months ago doing our homeland briefing. A gentleman brought us to his borough, and he showed us, right, this little memorial. And what it was is that intersection and road was where all the first responders would go over. And so for 30 days, direction only went one way into the city to go rescue people, and other people didn't use kind of this roadway, right? And it was just such a touching thing, and a lot of people, of course, in this borough died, and their photos are in there and their stories are in there. And it's sometimes we have to be taken back to that moment to see it, right? And
Mhm.
to remember all these people who stepped up and did really, really great things that day and in the aftermath. And then obviously even like Boone's team going over, and helping and saving their brothers, who were being attacked by terrorists.
Mhm.
We have a lot of heroes, right?
Yeah,
And we need to honor them today.
Yeah, I
exactly.
think we always sort of focus on, the military, and being from the military. Like I get that, but we always forget about, the firefighters and police officers who actually ran into the burning towers, when they're making these crazy sounds. That sounds like the building's going to come down, and they still ran in. Or the crew in Pastors from Flight 93. Like those are real heroes right there. We should honor them and remember them.
Yeah, yeah, and your guys' interpreter, I understand from my conversation with Mr. Tanto, he was pointing out how to him that's where he saw real courage. Is that this guy? I mean, it's different when like guys like us, right, that are trained and have been
Mhm.
through that fire. You're like a horse that's been fire tested. Of course, you're going to jump over that, fire blaze. No big deal. It's not even it's reactionary. It's muscle memory. It's not, you're not even putting too much thought into it. Here, this poor guy. I mean, when he pointed that out, I'm like, you know what? That really is courage. Um,
Mhm.
to trust in people like us, that when we say come with us, that it's going to somehow be okay when it's not okay. To me, that's
Mhm.
incredible courage. I mean, yeah, and like you were saying, the firefighters and just good citizens, the good Samaritans,
Mhm.
that happens all over the world, and we're unfortunately we don't get to hear too much of that because the media likes to, of course, just talk about the negative. But be that good
Mhm.
Samaritan, and you don't have to be brave or a warrior to step up. Any one of us can be a hero. Any one of us can just step up to the plate when opportunity knocks on your door. Because stuff like this happens all over the world all the time, and there's always an opportunity to step up and potentially save people's lives.
Yep.
Yeah, there are a lot of brave Americans during, the night in Benghazi, but no one was braver than our interpreter. He was a brave American.
I love that. I love that story. Well, folks, I hate to cut this short. You all have somewhere to go, and I want to make sure that we respect your time. Um, are there any closing thoughts and statements that you would like to make before we wrap this up?
Just one thing is, we're always strongest united against our enemies. And I do think we have to take a step back and decide where are my ideals, right? Who is most like me? Political difference mean nothing, right? And just come together again, be American, or be Israeli or whatever country you're from, be a patriot
Yeah.
of your country. And it's the best way to live your life.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Boone, Sarah, you guys are amazing. Keep up the amazing work. I mean, I know you're each in your own respective fields. You are training Americans, you're helping better America. And I know that you put in a lot of hard work to do that. And I really honor and respect you guys. And I'm so grateful to even be able to communicate with you on a personal level, and it's a real honor to know good people from the other side of the pond, from my home country, where my family's originally from, that are really stepping up to the plate and just doing amazing things in a really hard time to stand up, because I know that what you're doing is not easy. It's not easy to stick your neck out there and to be the prophet of doom, so to speak, right? I
Yes.
I think of because again, when I think of what you guys are doing, I also think of the prophets. It's not some guy in a cloak and gnarly beard in the desert. That's not necessarily your prophet. If you look at the prophets, they're the ones that would tell the kings, they would tell the leadership of their countries, here's what's really going on. This is the on the beat from the ground reality, and here's what you can do to turn from this. But the other thing that the prophet said is repeatedly is that we need to return to God, and we need to repent from trying to use our own wisdom and our own ways, humanism, and all these isms that have come in. And so that was also my parting message from this takeaway that hopefully people can take away from is strengthen your roots and your faith, because that is also going to be what's going to help in these times that are ahead of us, because there's not going to be better times, in my opinion. And I hope I'm wrong. I really do. I really hope I can say that what I said here is an absolute garbage, and I'll be so happy to be wrong on that. But that's the way things are looking, and the only way to get through these things is through community, faith, and good people stepping up and being good Samaritans. So, guys, thank you so much for this time. Thank you for the wonderful message that you're sharing with people here around the world that are listening. And hopefully we'll be able to take these pearls of wisdom and be part of the solution and not the problem.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, peace out, y'all, guys. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. Make sure to subscribe, share this message so we can get this into as many people, into the hands and eyes of as many people as possible, so they can be informed and be empowered. Shalom, guys, from Israel. Thank you.